Welcome back to the Flickr podcast. Do me a huge favor, make sure you hit that like button, and if you want to, subscribe. Today we're going to talk about the book of Revelation, and we're going to try to, in the best way that we can, relate it to the current times of today. So both Wally and I are Christians, we're believers, but we're not extremely well studied in the Bible. We're not Bible scholars by any sense. So make sure you take that into consideration. We're just going to kind of casually go through it and talk about it and try to relate it to today's time period to see if there's any sort of clues or anything that's happening in the world today that would line up with the book of Revelation to let us know where we may be in that timeline.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that we're not biblical scholars. You know, we're just a couple regular guys with a regular Christian sort of upbringing. Like personally for me, it's kind of in and out of God, but I would definitely call myself a Christian at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% Christian. For me, anyways. We've got a great video that pretty much sums up the whole moment of time that we may be in. Let's go to it.
In your opinion, are we living in the end times?
Yeah. We are now living in the most prophetic time since the first coming of Jesus Christ. I could take an hour or two and prove that to you. We don't have that kind of time right now, but we really are. I preach and teach on it all the time, and I've written books on it, and this prophecy conference I'm doing, I spent an hour and a half talking about why it is and how we know that we are living in the most prophetic times since the first coming of Jesus. And I'm trying to wake up the church. Look, we're living in very prophetic times. Israel's back in the land. Jerusalem now belongs to Israel. You know, the Middle East is on fire. Syria has collapsed. Turkey's collapsing into an Ottoman empire. Russia's in alignment with Persia. Persia and North Korea. China's got their first military base out of their nation. I mean, on and on. The borders are collapsing. Western culture's being overrun by political correctness. Then to think of the technology explosion. And I love technology. I'm a techno geek. So I'm not one of those old guys that say, well, that newfangled stuff, that's of the devil. Well, but here's the deal. We have eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So every technological boom that comes forward, CRISPR-Cas9, that's amazing. Genetic editing, that's astounding. Can we use it for good? Absolutely. We can bless people's lives, but is it going to be used only for good? Absolutely not. In fact, now it's already perverted and perverse, and we have not yet seen the bottom of that dark hole. All right? Robotics and artificial intelligence. Can we use that for good? Oh my gosh, it would just make the whole world transformed in some wonderful ways. But the problem is, we build robots, we put artificial intelligence, and then the makers of it say, I know what, let's have sex with it. It's just the perversion is uncontrollable. Pandora's box has been opened. So when you put all this stuff together, and then you understand that we're the first generation in humankind to see the convergence of all this stuff since the return of Israel just 70 years ago. Just 7 years, our historical lifetime. You and I, neither one of us are 70 years old, but you and I both grew up with Israel has always been there in our lifetime, but it really hasn't. It's just been 7 little decades. 7 little decades it's been there. 2,700 years before that, there was no Israel. Yet the word of God said in the last days, I'm bringing it back, and I'm paraphrasing, but God says it in Ezekiel 38, 39, says it in Deuteronomy 4, and several other scriptures. In paraphrasing, he says, and when I do this, then the nations will know that I am the Lord, and there is no other. I will bring them back in the sight of the nations. This will be my witness to the nations that I am the Lord. And I'm going to paraphrase and add this because this is the implication of it, and that we are in the last days. When you see Israel return, we're 70 years. We're just a few months the other side of Jerusalem being restored. Another 2,700-year-old prophecy that we're living in the midst of.
You know, the most fascinating thing to me about this was the point he brought up about basically the black and white TV had just come out 70 years ago, and all that's been happening technology-wise, politically, wars, and where we are at right now with AI. I mean, it's only been 7 decades. That's incredible to me that all that is space flight, satellites. Elon's talking about going to Mars here pretty soon. You know, it's just, that blows my mind.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild. It's definitely got to be the technology is a beast of its own. Like the way that it comes in and improves, or we improve it over time so quickly. It's pretty wild. I think maybe the most catching things that he said to me is mentioning about the scripture and how it lines up with what's happening right now.
Yes.
You know, that kind of, according to the Bible, would point to we are in the end times.
That's why the Bible is so incredible, because it calls a lot of this out, and a lot of it has happened
Right.
recently.
Right. I mean, at a certain point, how long can you deny it for? You know, I mean, I'm talking about unbelievers. But I think it's an education thing mostly. All right, well, that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and start to dive into it. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start with the 7 seals in the book of Revelation, and go through those and see if there's anything we can kind of match to today, or maybe we can't match it to today either. But by the end of the podcast, I would like to have some sort of solid understanding of some signs that I can rely on that would tell me, okay, because the book of Revelations is extremely complicated, but it is the end. The book of Revelation is the end times, and there are certain things you, as a Christian, should definitely be looking out for to understand, because there are unforgivable moments like the mark of the beast. If you take that, then that's it. You will not inherit God's kingdom. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. So that really is one of the more important things to me, to understand what is the mark of the beast, or what could be the mark of the beast, or what are the signs or characteristics of the mark of the beast, so I can make sure that that's not something I take.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Okay.
Yeah. Looking for those signs. Who is the Antichrist? Being able to notice what's happening in real time, that would be a big thing, if it is coming indeed around the corner, which it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
But, you know.
I don't know if that impending sense of doom is just a normal human thing, or if,
Yeah, but nowadays I think it's quite normal.
yeah.
But I think the seventh seals is a good start, because
Yeah.
it's the Bible's timeline and how it works out a little bit.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, let's take a look at the 7 seals. We'll pull up the first one here. It says, the first seal, the conqueror. Then I saw as the Lamb broke one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures call out with a voice of thunder, "Come." I looked, and behold, a white horse, and it says, of victory, whose rider carried a bow, and a crown of victory was given to him, and he rode forth conquering and to conquer. So that's the first seal. A horse, a white horse, who is then going to ride forth conquering and then to conquer.
and I believe a lot of this is speaking in some sort of symbolism, right?
Yeah, you're not actually going to see a white horse flying through the sky or anything like that.
In 2026, I don't see that happening.
No. No, you're not going to see a white. No, it is, yeah, it's symbolism. So this is actually kind of tough. Like, there is one thing going on that would make me think that maybe this could be the first seal, and that's Muslims are being transported all over the world into different countries.
Yeah.
That's the only real.
That is happening right now.
Yeah. And to do that, and I don't know if Muslim is the Antichrist religion, and, you know, or what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that I can see that would relate to this first seal going on. Another thing maybe is just media in general. Because it says conquering, it doesn't say physically conquering, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can conquer the world or peoples, and conquering their mind
Absolutely.
is probably the most effective and perhaps actually the easiest.
See, you are relating it to recent events. But part of my mind looks at this and thinks a white horse going forth and conquering, like on the timeline of things, because one thing I learned in this process is some of this scripture, or prophetic scripture specifically, one day could equal 1,000 years. And that opens up the timeline a lot. And then, so when I see, like, potentially some of these seals have already been opened, is kind of what I'm getting at. And
Could
that
be.
could be, like, let's say, the discovery of the New World. And going there and conquering this new continent.
So you're talking about back in Christopher Columbus
Yes,
days?
exactly. Manifest destiny, the birth of the Western world. I mean, it's just thought.
That could be too. I mean, when you look at what comes out of the Western world these days, although there's good things as well, but there's a lot of depravity involved, debauchery.
Yeah, the Western world right now doesn't look real great. We're scaring some other folks
Yeah, I'm sure.
with that depravity. We'll
Right.
just call it depravity. You know, we're wealthy. We got a lot of time on our hands, and that opens up to that depravity, for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good spiritual way to look at it. I never really considered that.
And the white horse, clean, cleanse, new.
Yeah.
That's what
Masquerading as.
I did learn to not narrow my timeline like all this stuff happening in a quick period of time, although it very well could. But
So you're looking at it.
I widened my angle.
Yeah. Could have been thousands of years.
Yeah.
I've never really looked at that. And I don't know. But I have a feeling all of this is going to happen relatively quickly.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I'm right.
The way it reads, some pieces of it do happen quickly, I think.
Any other thoughts on the first seal?
No, I guess not.
All right, let's check out the second seal. Okay, the second seal is war. It says, when he broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature call out, "Come," and another fiery red horse, it says, of bloodshed, came out, and its rider was empowered to take peace from the earth so that men would slaughter one another, and a great sword was given to him. After sword, it says, of war and violent death. So that's pretty specific, actually.
Yes. And again, on that one, like if you're looking the way I do this exercise of looking at it a wider, that could be World War I, II, III. And of course, we're not in III yet, but maybe we are. There was a lot of people dying on planet Earth during those world wars.
Yeah, a lot.
I mean, it's very...
And, which is interesting, in World War II, it was very much against Jewish people.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So, which ties into all this, of course. 1948, the Zionists created a Jewish state in 1948 after World War II, that was a big deal. That's, in Jewish religion, my understanding is that was prophesized, that they would be going back to the homeland. And after World War II, they went back to the homeland.
Yeah, I think that's in the Bible too.
Yeah,
Well, I guess the Torah is just the first part of the Bible, right?
I'm not sure, but...
Okay. I'm not sure either, but I think so. Could be wrong, though. But other than that, I mean, obviously we've seen war over and over again. But nothing really sticks out to me in very recent times. There was the Hamas attack on Israel, which triggered a counterattack. But that doesn't seem like this level, right? Or we've definitely seen way, way larger levels of death from war in the past than we do right now.
The last sentence there is, and a great sword of war and violent death was given to him.
which was the rider of the horse. I mean, there is a lot of, I don't know how to put it. There's a lot of angst, against one another. It seems like right now, not only necessarily, not necessarily with violence, but just in general. Where it could be leading up to a point where one side is done listening to the other, and vice versa, and some sort of actual war breaks out. And we do have, there is the Ukraine and Russia war right now, and one slip there could bring in China, North Korea, the United States, and
Yeah, the Russians are now aligning with Iran, which is Persia. So we have these Russians, for the most part, is a Christian nation, aligning with the Persians, who are primarily Islamic. They have this kind of like they're talking to each other, and that's a big one right there, I think.
yeah. In what way?
It's just it's an alliance that's being built because I think maybe the depravity of the Western world and the Western world's neocon aggressions, possibly NATO. The CIA. We did a lot of bad shit in Iran a while back, and there's a lot of bad blood out there, and it's starting to bring Russia and Iran together, and then Russia and China.
Right. Yeah, nothing's triggered yet. But I would say from the first two, there's no real clear, decisive sign that I could see or pinpoint to lead me
That's
to
part of
believe.
what this whole Revelations thing is tricky, because it's sort
Yeah.
of,
There are others, though, in the future. The Mark of the Beast is a big one. Okay, let's get to the third seal here. It says, when he, the Lamb, broke open the third seal, I heard the third living creature call out, "Come." I looked, and behold, a black horse of famine, and the rider in his hand a pair of scales. So like a balance, scales on both sides. And I heard something like a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, which is a day's wage. So a quart of wheat for a day's wage, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wage, and did not damage the oil and the wine.
that one definitely resonates now, right where we're in this this economy, where what's being said there is that it takes a day's wages just to feed yourself,
Right.
one person. And I feel
Well,
that. I feel that.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but we're getting a glimpse of that tangible.
A push in that direction. Food is way more expensive than it used to be.
That thought is possible.
Yeah,
That concept is that's crossed their mind in a way.
right,
Like, how bad can this get?
right. I mean, I think food prices have gone up by like 30 to 50% over the last few years. So yeah, there's definitely a hint of that.
But there's also been famines, like I said again, doing the wider lens. There's been famines in the past, African famines. That that was the
There's
80s.
famines right now, I'm sure.
The
in the
famines
world.
right now, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there were some big ones, like in the 80s.
Another thing is they're trying to make it. I've seen where they're trying to make it tougher on farmers
Yeah, yeah, good point.
as well,
Yeah,
which obviously feed the world.
yeah, that's part of that big government stuff, that top-down legislation. That there's two sides to that coin, and it does drive food prices up.
I think food was one of the ones that was hit the hardest. It seems like,
know,
I think more than energy, more than your common
Yeah.
goods or tools, which is interesting because food is the one, everybody needs that, right? Not everybody needs a car. Not everybody needs certain things, but food is definitely one that everybody needs and was hit the hardest.
So that one, that's a good one because it's like that's kind of happening right now, or at least it feels like it.
Yeah, and I could see it, if it gets worse. The interesting thing about that one is it did not damage the oil and the wine, which I don't. Did not damage the oil and the wine.
But this is the third seal. So this just tells me, with all the wars, the famine, you see how I struggle with the timeline?
Yeah.
When you start to relate it to the third seal. And then it starts to make me think we could be a ways away from Revelation still. Either that or we're halfway into it.
Yeah. Depending on the time scale.
Yep.
I think, honestly, if it's, let's say it's 2,000 years down the road, I don't care. Like, it's not going to concern me.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that far.
But, okay. Well, let's take a look at the fourth seal here, which is the fourth seal, death. Then it says, when he broke open the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, come. So I looked, and behold, ashen, which is a pale greenish gray horse, like a corpse representing death and pestilence, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades was following with him. They were given authority and power over a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword and with famine and with plague and by the wild beasts of the earth.
Okay, yeah, that's the one that's these angels go out there and they're an army of 200 million.
Maybe.
I think so. I think they're an army of 200 million. And they're given the task of, going out there and slaughtering.
I think that's part of it. Let me read this again. So I think, okay, so yeah, there may be 200 million involved in this. The way I look at these is these are spirits being unleashed on the earth that will then translate into the physical.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because whether that's giving 200 million people the mindset of they must kill this certain type of person or whatever it is, but it also includes pestilence, right? Which I guess could be human controlled, right? Viruses could certainly be and potentially have been. We just had one where there's a huge argument whether or not it was, created and then leaked from a lab, or if it was a natural mutation.
What's the definition of pestilence?
Pestilence, it says pestilence and disease,
Okay.
right? So pestilence, obviously, I think pestilence would transfer or be defined as, essentially pests.
Okay, pests.
But let's double check that. No.
It did say...
Fatal epidemic disease, especially bubonic plague.
Okay.
So it actually, no, it's not pests. It's,
Disease.
yeah.
So, I like what you're doing there about that being demons and that they're out there, 200 million demons, essentially creating disease amongst the people.
Yeah. It's not exactly what I meant.
No?
No. Because there's one rider and one horse. But then it says, and Hades, and then it says in parentheses, the realm of death was following him. Which I guess would include the demonic. But it's more of their influence on people.
Okay.
It was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like if there's 200 million people that think they have to kill a certain kind of person, that to me actually seems pretty demonic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like what's grabbing a hold of them to make them go and murder people, right? I would think that would be demonic.
Yeah, it's definitely demonic.
But it says kill with the sword, with famine and pestilence and disease. But it also says, and by the wild beasts of the earth. And demons can take over animals as well, or possess them.
Well, there's malaria comes from mosquitoes. You could say mosquitoes a beast. There's
Yeah.
a lot of that that's gone. That's one of the biggest killers on the planet ever, I believe. What we don't know is if these are talking about if this references stuff that already, if that seal has been broken already. We had the Black Plague and malaria and all cancer. You just go on and on.
Yeah.
You go on.
It's
and on.
almost like it must have been broken already.
Yeah. So I feel like you could argue that the fourth seal is already been broken.
But it also says killing a fourth, right?
Well,
Killing a
if you added them all up, it's a
fourth
lot.
part of the earth.
If you add up malaria and you add up the Black Plague, it's a huge number.
And you can include all pestilence in that,
Yeah.
all disease,
Yeah.
right? So, to me, it would seem that the fourth seal has been broken.
All right, what's fifth?
All right, the fifth seal, it says, the fifth seal, martyrs. Then it says, when he broke open the fifth seal, I saw underneath the altar the souls of those who had been slaughtered because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had maintained. They cried in a loud voice, saying, O Lord, holy and true, how long now before I will sit in judgment and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? Then they were each given a white robe, and they were told to rest and wait quietly for a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers and sisters who were to be killed as they would have been, or they had been, would be completed. So they got to wait until everybody else on earth still, dies for the sake of Christ. That's an interesting seal, because it's just like that whole seal, all it really is the ones who have already died being like, okay, we're ready to judge those who have denied you, essentially, who have denied Christ. And then he says, no, you got to wait.
You got to have some patience.
Yeah, how is that a seal?
With all these seals, there's events going on. There's more detail there,
What do you mean?
I think, isn't there? So, for instance,
What we're reading here from is Revelations chapter 6 in order. So maybe in the following chapters it goes through and talks about them a little more, but that
it's kind of a time of waiting, right? And it's recognizing the promise of the Messiah to come back. And maybe it's just referencing a stage where it's just, God is outwardly stating that, be patient.
Yeah, exercise patience.
Yeah.
I still am having trouble, I guess, finding that to be a seal, because every other time it has initiated a specific action. And this time it's like, hold up now. Hold up. Which I guess could be a specific action. But, well, okay, what it is like in all the other ones, something was unleashed. Right? And in this seal, there doesn't seem to be an unleashing.
Yes. It's interesting.
It's almost like it woke up those people.
After all the disease and stuff that happened at the previous seal.
No, like it woke up the people underneath the altars, the souls of those who had been slaughtered because of the word of
Okay,
God.
all right.
Like
No, I'm on the same page.
like all of a sudden they woke up. And they're like, okay, let us move forward into our calling, or whatever it is, which is in a higher realm in heaven. All right, let's take a look at the sixth seal, which is the sixth seal. It's called terror, at least in the Amplified version of the Bible. It says, I looked when he broke open the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became as black sackcloth of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, like a fig tree shedding its late summer figs when shaken by a strong wind. The sky was split and rolled up like a scroll, and every mountain and island was dislodged and moved out of their places. Then the kings of the earth and the great men. Well, hang on. Let's wait until we get to that second part there.
That sounds like a pole shift or something.
That does sound like a
Doesn't
pole
it sound like a
shift.
pole shift?
Yeah.
Was sky opening up, right? Like if you went through this accelerated pole shift, it'd be like that.
And the sun became as black as sackcloth. So the sun became very black. But the moon became like blood. Obviously, we would have to view that as from on the earth.
Yeah.
So for the sun to become black, it's got to be covered. right? So there's got to be some sort of, it could be a pole shift and volcanoes are getting set off all over the place or something, and some way, shape, or form the sky is getting covered in clouds.
Keep reading.
But there was more to that. Oh, and there was earthquakes, right? Because it's talking about, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth like a fig tree.
Islands were dislodged and moved out of their places.
Dude, that's got to be a huge earthquake. And if stars are falling, that's got to be like meteors or something coming from space, I would think. Or what do you think about that?
Or, if things are that bad, I mean, if you have a massive eruption, there could be rocks coming down everywhere, too.
That's a good point. If, let's say, asteroids were smashing into the Earth, that would kick stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or even volcanic eruptions on a mass scale.
Yeah.
It's going to throw.
And I know earthquakes can cause volcanic eruptions. And the mountains were moving. What did it say about the islands?
They were moved from their places.
Yeah,
They shifted.
that sounds like it sounds like an event as big as a polar shift.
So that definitely has not happened yet.
No.
So if we go back a little bit, so now I wonder if where we're at right now is the fifth seal.
The souls who have died in his name.
Yeah, we're
To
maybe
hold up.
somewhere in the fifth seal right now. Just because that event is so incredibly earth-shaking that obviously it hasn't happened yet.
That one you couldn't miss, and there's more to it. So yeah, let's go ahead and read on now. So after all that earthly devastation, we got then the kings of the earth and the great men and the military commanders of the wealthy and the strong and everyone slave free hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they called to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, for the wrath and indignation of the Lamb, for the great day of their wrath and vengeance and retribution has come, and who is able to stand before the wrath of the Lamb. Okay, now I can kind of understand, reading the sixth seal, I can kind of understand the fifth seal now. Because the sixth seal is huge, and everybody, it seems like, who's still on earth is scared. And they also seem like they're the ones who are not of God. Because it says, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne. They're scared
Yeah.
of God.
So the judgment has started.
Big time. Well, maybe. Yeah, that could be.
In what form appears to be a polar shift event to me.
Yeah, a huge event. Military commanders, wealthy and strong, and everyone. I like they put military commanders in there.
Maybe that's part of the Amplified Bible where it uses terminology that's a little more modern.
Yeah, it could be. Because a lot of people don't necessarily think of military commanders as like you think of the president as the head of the nation. But the one that's actually, like in a situation like this, the military commanders are the ones who control
It's true.
the strength, the military.
They're almost the kings in a way.
Almost, yeah. And there have been times in history where military commanders have participated in coups to overthrow the government. You know, it's funny because I never really thought about how strong those people actually are, how much power they have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All the power in a way, almost.
Yeah.
The ultimate power.
It's like they have the power. Certainly in a catastrophe like this, they have the power. I mean, the president wouldn't even be able to communicate with the military potentially in this situation. People would look up, everybody in the military would look to their commander, you know.
And it's basically saying that the military, even the military commanders had to go underground.
What it says there, really, to just break it down, is the most powerful and the least powerful. Everybody is included.
Everybody still alive on Earth
Everybody who is still alive, yeah.
went underground.
Right. And we're scared. And they were scared of God, dude. That's what it says, basically, right there. That's pretty crazy. And then in this version of the Bible, so that hasn't happened yet. That's something you could definitely look out for. You would know about that one. But, and then, I mean, that's what I got for the seals.
My understanding is the seventh seal is after that cleansing, we'll just call it a cleansing, I guess. That at
Yeah.
some point, that's where God returns to inhabit the earth.
Yeah, that's what it's showing here. Is the seventh seal? At least here, it's called the rapture, and that's God takes all of His people who are still left
Yeah.
from the earth. Okay. So I got to be real with you. That didn't help me very much. As my personal mission is to have solid signs of what's happening, so I can understand the timeline. And unfortunately, aside from essentially what sounded like a potential polar shift or meteor shower striking the Earth, I didn't get much from that.
It doesn't pin the timeline down very well, and I think it's intentional, though.
Yeah.
I feel like it's intentional because we're not, we can't know the date of our destruction.
Right. It says nobody knows except for God. Not even his angels. So he definitely holds that one close to his chest.
Or the date of the return of Christ.
Okay, had to take a quick break there, but this is the part I'm really interested in because this is the one I feel like you can nail down as a Christian. Whereas the signs are a little more almost arbitrary from our perspective. Right? So we don't even know if it's going to be a quick succession over a year, 2 years, 3 years, or if it's happening over a course of multiple thousands of years. Kind of tough to nail down aside from the polar shift one. The mark of the beast is a lot more definitive. So some of the characteristics of the mark of the beast, one, it seems to be a physical identification. Whether it's a barcode or a chip, it's going to be implanted or put onto your right hand or your forehead. Right? And without the mark of the beast, you won't be able to participate essentially in society because you won't be able to participate in buying or selling anything, right? So there's essentially, if you don't take the mark of the beast, as far as society is concerned, you are sentenced to destitute in the wilderness.
Which is where I'm going.
Yeah, certainly, right? Because this one you have to avoid at all costs, and it's not going to be easy to avoid. Because the amount of pressure that's going to be put on you from society and authorities is going to be immense.
Yeah. You see, the chip thing does seem kind of likely because it was a few years back, there was a group of people in Sweden that were actually having chips put in their hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually did that in Sweden for a little. I don't know where it's at now or if that's still happening and evolving, but they're...
I'd imagine it's evolving. At some point, there'll be, let's say it is a chip. I kind of believe, at least from this age that we're in, is that it's most likely to be some sort of chip. And the chip's going to not only hold, all of your identification to whatever the beast system is, whatever the centralized database, that's whenever it's pinged, it goes and references. You know what I'm saying?
Sounds very dystopian.
Yeah, 100%. But that's kind of one you can nail down, right? And I think we should talk about it from the perspective of technology, also how it could be presented, right? Because I don't think the mark of the beast is going to be presented as, in the beginning anyways, take this or we're going to kill you. Because people would be like, what? What are you talking about? That's insane. Like, there would be a revolt. It's going to be presented as safe, secure, convenient. It's going to allow them to...
Perhaps this is going to solve... There's something happens right before the Antichrist that's so terrible that tool of fear-mongering, if you take the mark, that's going to solve this problem that nearly killed you, or this enormous fear that everyone is sharing at that time.
What could that be?
Maybe it could be something like COVID, a disease. It could be I mean, so many things it could be. It could be that war escalated to a point and somehow this Antichrist brokers some sort of peace or creates peace in order to maintain that peace after he solves this problem. He says, we got to do this so we never get back there, or something like that. But it has to be very diabolical, because I think there's a lot of Christians, and maybe that's why some of us are Christians, because those of us know the Bible, I feel like we're going to see this coming, but it also needs to be very diabolical that it could actually trick us too, a lot of us.
Yeah, I think that you mean trick Christians in
Yes.
general. Okay.
Yes. Even though we're out on the watch for it.
We already saw almost like a test run with COVID when you had to get the inoculation, and in certain places, if you didn't get the inoculation, you weren't allowed into a business. You were refused service.
Yep. We all got a taste of that.
You saw in mainstream media how they would try to
Fearmonger.
fearmonger. What's another word for fearmongering?
Another thing is this just cycle of repeating things I've noticed with these media types, where they repeat something, and it's almost like the Mockingbird media thing, right? Where you're programming people. I think that's a big thing that we're kind of noticing nowadays.
Yeah.
If you watch closely, even to little sound bites of a politician talking, and they have these narratives, and they'll say repeated things, and us humans are still emotional, easy to program, hackable beings.
Right.
And it's
Because it was more than fear mongering. It wasn't just fear mongering. Fear mongering was the first stage, right? And then the second stage was bully into compliance.
but there you go.
From a societal standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Like, these people are bad. The ones who don't take it, they're bad people.
It's very divisive.
Yeah. It's interesting because we got to see what a test run would look like
Yeah.
for the Mark of the Beast. How it would be presented, this is going to stop this terrible thing, right? This is going to stop this terrible thing. But you can't be around people who don't have it, too, right? Like, that whole push was there as well. And the refusal of service.
And it was very packaged that this is the only solution, and everything else
Right.
is vilified.
Right. That's true. That's a good point.
And a lot of people lost their jobs, they lost their position in the military, it was very, very intense. Actually, maybe one of the most, personally for me, was the most scary and dystopian and Big Brother experience I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. I think that experience, at least from our perspective, because we have never lived in a communist country or anything, it may have been different for them, right?
Yeah.
They're more scared of their government.
Absolutely, yeah.
But at least from the Western side of things, that was it,
Yeah.
by
Yeah,
far,
that's a good point.
perhaps throughout history. So I think that's a good way. Again, let's get into the packaging of it, right? So the way that the whole COVID inoculation came through was initially started with fear, okay? I think that the Mark of the Beast may or may not start with fear. I don't know. But I feel like it's going to be packaged as more of a convenience thing,
Okay.
right? Because imagine if everybody has this mark, and this mark identifies you and has all your information, all your medical information, all your financial information. But of course, it's also tracking you, where you're going.
We kind of already have something like that almost.
We do, yeah, that's true. But you can turn off location services and stuff like that on the phone. So I think they're going to package this as massive convenience and safety.
Next level.
Yeah. But I think you're right, that there may be some event that they'll use to push fear onto people into getting it as well. The thing is if you're a Christian, I don't see this one slipping past you.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
Revelations itself is even a large topic of research for people even outside of Christianity.
Yeah, true.
I mean, if you don't, you haven't heard of Revelations or seen the movie at this point, where have you been? So it's going to have to be pretty tricky.
Yeah.
And there will be a lot of people that will not take it. And we will have to deal with the consequences. And I'm ready,
Yeah.
personally.
Well, I think, I mean, let's talk about what the consequences of not taking the mark of the beast would be. Like in a little bit more detail. So you're essentially, regardless of who you are, because it does say both rich and poor are going to have to take this. So, but let's just take it from an average person, not from a rich guy or a poor guy. So an average person, you're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your house. You're not going to have any way to support yourself, or your family. You're going to be looked down on by the rest of society. You're going to be looked at like you're a potential threat as well.
Definitely a potential threat. So much so that I think that if you're found by a hierarchy of power that you do not have the mark, you might be incarcerated.
Right.
And then
Almost like kind of how we would view a terrorist. I think you're going to be looked at like
like a
that sort
terrorist,
of
yes. So, yep.
by society. And I in my head, I keep seeing homeless people, right? Like homeless people, they don't have jobs, they don't have a house, right? They're on the streets. Most people just walk right by them as if they almost don't exist, you know? But I think it's going to be worse than that. I think you're going to have to not be around society. I think you're going to have to leave. Meaning you're going to have to go into the wilderness. You're going to have to go into the forest, the hills, the desert, or whatever is around you to escape any sort of pressure or to escape arrest.
There's a lot of talk about the collective nowadays and the hive mind, and you know how we're moving towards a collective consciousness, and they can know if you're about to commit a crime or
I think we need to
whatever.
bring to this podcast.
Because what if the mark was something like that, where you had to
What do you think of that?
decide to join that collective hive
Best
mind
thing I saw.
or not? And again, I definitely would not join that.
Right. You can't.
But
because
there were
ultimately-
benefits to that collective.
Oh, 100%.
You know, a lot of maybe like cognitively you're on a higher vibration, or who knows.
I see what you're saying. Like you maybe would be linked into
Yeah.
the knowledge of all the people or the internet.
It would be, there
You
might
wouldn't
be
have it.
something that's pretty compelling and amazing about it, or
Right.
something.
Like maybe your child would be at a disadvantage in life if they didn't take this mark, which offered
Yep.
these particular.
Something to similar to some sort of utopia
Yeah. Let's finish.
that will turn into a very ugly dystopia.
You know, I heard a prophet tell a story, kind of like they do in the Bible, where he was given a vision of the mark of the beast. And that so saying it's a chip maybe isn't really all of it. Like it's like there's Neuralink, right? Which allows you to control different computers and things like that. Interact digitally. Well, what's version 10 of the Neuralink going to be capable of, so to speak? So from this vision that this guy was given, it also can regulate all the hormones within your body. So if you were to get out of line, let's say you were to get angry and you were actually going to murder somebody, the chip would calm you down. You wouldn't be able to do that. Another thing is if you wanted to say, or if you wanted to unalive yourself, every time you went to go do it, let's say jump off of a bridge, your chip would automatically calm you down. Right? So you wouldn't really, and in that aspect as well. Essentially, it's regulating your emotions and how you feel. And so here's the story, okay? He said he saw a family in the forest, and they were doing everything they could to avoid the police force or army or whatever that's trying to track down the Christians who don't have the mark.
This is really interesting.
Yeah. And they basically had to live in the forest, and they had
A
to
lot of good points.
be very careful of making noise. Because if there was noise made, there were drones over top that, let's say you shot a rabbit or something, it would hear the noise and they would go directly to the noise immediately. And then obviously drones have the capabilities of cameras and
Video would add to the podcast.
thermal
We should probably correct
vision and whatnot, so they would find you and they would track you. And the people also had to be very careful of where they built fires and all of these things, right? So eventually, this family gets caught.
Not be a bad way to.
And it was 2 children, a wife and a husband. And they were all given the choice, you take the mark or we're going to behead you.
I came across.
And what he even described, what they used to behead them, which was like a long, I don't know what to call it, like, I don't think it's a saber, but it has like the curve and it gets bigger at the end kind of thing. Like a Middle Eastern style sword. Maybe it's Persian, I'm not sure. But so and they also had guns. So if you were to run, they could shoot you with a gun and it would immobilize you.
Maybe we just take.
But you weren't hit with a bullet, you were hit with a signal of some sort. Right, so some sort of technology where they could just point, shoot, you're immobilized.
I see what you're saying.
Anyway, so they catch the family and they give them all the choice. And they didn't give the kids themselves the choice, they made the parents decide. So it was take this chip
redo the
or we're going to
intro?
kill you. Right, we're going to cut your head off.
I'm gonna lead right to that video.
So
Okay.
the mom said, yeah, go ahead and give it to my kids.
7 seals.
And she also took the chip. And then the husband absolutely refused.
We had some good exchange.
And they cut the husband's head off. They said he lopped his head off, and the chip is something they can do right then and there, right? So it's a device, they put it on you, hit the button, or the mark of the beast, I should say, and it is implanted and it's active immediately. So when they cut the husband's head off, the wife and the children saw it, but they didn't react to it at all emotionally,
A lot of times he repeats himself in that video. I can go
right?
with
So
what
it
he
wasn't
thinks,
like
you know.
they just saw, or it's a tough thing to go off of a vision like this. But the way I see it, if this vision is correct, I think you're in a prison within yourself,
Okay.
right? Like you may still have the thought initially, oh my God, they just cut off my husband's head, or they just killed my father right in front of me. But the chip so quickly calms you down that essentially free will and all of what you are as humanity is gone.
Yeah. Sounds like zombie stuff.
Right. He also told stories of like people having to do daily chores, but there was like no emotion within that person. One of them was just mowing his lawn, but there was nothing there. But he still mowed the lawn.
And the game's already over at that point, right?
you-
If the Antichrist convinces this large aspect of the population to do that, then he is already the game's over. You have control of those people that took the mark of the beast, you know, and it's game set match at that point.
Right.
I'm definitely gonna be out in the wilderness. It's interesting you tell that story of that prophetic vision, because I saw another one. This is years ago about this older gentleman describing his dreams about future society, and he explained these visions of these crystal cities with just beautiful, huge metropolises, and then the other visions were these people that didn't buy into this utopia, and they lived in the wilderness. They were like rebels.
That sounds
All the
about
same
right.
fan. And that was a YouTube that's still out there. I don't know the name of it, but kind of the same feel.
Yeah. If you look at it from the side of the metropolis, you could perfect a city with no crime.
Yeah.
You could essentially get rid of disease.
Yeah. He did say that in there, that the people in the utopia, they don't necessarily have to work, but they would have to do something, whether it's art or whether just community stuff, or, but there was nobody was really working.
You had to contribute.
You had to
Nobody was
contribute.
working.
I mean, if you wanted to work, you could work, but you didn't have to. But you were expected to contribute to the society in some way. And everything was provided. Food, water, everything, your housing, all provided. If that's the way it goes down, those utopias don't last long.
Well, in the case of the Mark of the Beast, it's not going to last long by God. God is going to come in.
Right, and God is going to cleanse that.
Right. That's what the 7 bowls that he orders his angels to pour out onto the earth. Okay, let's get into the 7 bowls of God's wrath in the book of Revelations. This is after people have taken the mark of the beast. What God's judgment causes to happen on the earth. Okay, the 7 bowls of God's wrath. This is Revelation 16. We're going to do the New International Version instead of the Amplified Version for this one. It says, "Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, 'Go pour out the 7 bowls of God's wrath on the earth.' The first angel went and poured out his bowl on the land, and ugly, festering sores broke out on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image."
Well, that's definitely why I'm not taking the mark of the beast. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, so that's just the first one, but that kind of shows, like, in the end, I mean, obviously, in the end, you're better off just not taking the mark and having your head cut off and struggling out in the wilderness.
Yeah, and I believe these angels are fallen angels, right?
I don't think so.
No?
No, this is God's directing these
Okay,
angels to go do
so
this.
these are God's
This is
angels.
God's judgment
Okay.
for those who are still on the earth, who have taken the mark, who have not come to him. So the first one, he pours it out in ugly, festering sores broken on the people who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. The second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it turned into blood like that of a dead person, and every living thing in the sea died. That's crazy. So in this instance, every living thing in the sea dies. When they say that it turned into the blood of a dead person, it reminds me of like a swamp or something. Like a dirty, something that's not moving, festering, rotting,
Yeah.
you know. Then the third angel poured out his bowl on the rivers and springs of water, and they became blood. Then I heard an angel in charge of the waters say, "You are just in these judgments, O Holy One, you who are and who were. For they have shed the blood of the holy people and your prophets, and you have given them blood to drink as they deserve." Some retribution here.
This is the the cleansing of earth happening right here, step by step.
Right. And then it says, "And I heard the altar respond, 'Yes, Lord God Almighty, true and just are your judgments.' The fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and the sun was allowed to scorch the people with fire. They were seared by the intense heat, and they cursed the name of God who had control over these plagues, but they refused to repent and glorify him."
It doesn't surprise me that they refuse to repent, because those that are left over weren't those great of individuals, really.
Right.
They're just the weak.
It's kind of sad, though.
It is sad. And it's interesting how the angel clarifies that this is a just move, because I'm sure the angel, if literally you think about the angel pouring these bowls, that's like you're unleashing just utter,
Right.
terrible, horrible things.
Yeah.
And it's like the angel's speaking, and he's reasoning it
Right.
and acknowledging that God's judgment is the right thing.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point. So the sun scorches the people who are left with the mark of the beast, and they still deny God. The fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness. People gnawed their tongues in agony and cursed the God of heaven because of their pains and sores, but they refused to repent of what they had done. Okay, this is kind of an interesting one, because all it says is, okay, they poured it, and then, okay, the beast's kingdom was plunged into darkness. Whatever that means exactly.
Complete darkness.
Lights
is what
out?
Yeah. Gnawed their tongues in agony. Boy, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
But like tongues could be like they were probably just wailing out in agony, pain, torment, not necessarily like biting their tongue.
Maybe. I don't really know. Or, yeah, hard to say, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east. Then I saw three impure spirits that looked like frogs. They came out of the mouth of the dragon, which in this case, I think the dragon is like some sort of nation state. And out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So just real quick, it's my understanding that the dragon is a symbol of nation states. The false prophet and the beast. The beast is, I think, a person. And then the false prophet is like a religious leader of whatever religion they're implementing because of the beast. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the beast takes the wound to the head, and then the prophet comes in and says, and the beast takes the wound to the head and survives something he shouldn't have survived. And then the prophet comes and says, let's make an image of that. And they worship the beast. So it's like a false religion.
Yep.
Right. So that's just kind of my point there, the prophet, of what those key terms were.
Yeah, you're correct on that.
Okay. And out of the mouth of the false prophet. Okay, they are demonic spirits that perform signs, and they go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them for the battle of the great day of God Almighty. So that's the sixth. Any thoughts on that one?
It's getting real out there. I mean, these are some of the darkest and ugliest moments of this whole thing, because
Right.
this is that cleansing before God comes back, and then there's the 1,000 years of peace.
Right.
So this
But
has to happen.
In totality. Anything about this sixth bowl? You have these basically demonic spirits coming out of the dragon, the beast, the prophet.
Not much there. It's like setting up for the last bowl. I feel
Yeah.
like.
Okay, and then the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and out of the temple came a loud voice from the throne saying, "It's done." Then there came flashes of lightning, rumbling, peals of thunder, and a severe earthquake. No earthquake like it had ever occurred since mankind has been on the earth. So tremendous was the quake, the great city split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup filled with wine of the wine of his wrath. Wine of the fury of his wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains could not be found. From the sky, huge hailstones, each weighing about 100 pounds, fell on the people, and they cursed God on the amount of, fell on the people, and they cursed God on account of the plague of hail, because the plague was so terrible.
And with that, the earth is purged.
Is it?
I think so.
But there's still people who are cursing God.
Well, I guess it's feasible that there were survivors. The seventh seal, where God comes back, I guess it doesn't imply that the whole earth is heavenly. So I guess
Either way, those bowls are heavy, man.
if some folks did manage to survive all that, God has basically said, okay, well, if you made it this far, then you could be part of the seventh seal in the 1,000 years of peace.
I wouldn't go saying that.
Well, if he's God, then that the intent of the bowls was to 100% cleanse things.
Yeah. It says right here, so this is the next chapter, so that's Revelations chapter 16 where the bowls are. And then in chapter 17 it says one of the angels who had one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away into the spirit, into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast and was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand filled with the abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery. But then here it says, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the abominations of the earth. So he's not done.
No, I guess not.
And then it says, I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. When I saw her, I was greatly astonished. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast, which you saw, once was, now is, and yet will come out of the abyss and go into destruction. The inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the creation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because it once was, now is not, and yet will come." Because it once was, now is not, and yet will come. Confused. Oh, it says right after that, this calls for a mind with wisdom. Respect. Oh, but then it says, the 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen. 1 is, the other has not yet come. Okay. So it kind of explains it right after that. The symbolism are rulers. Basically. And one of them is still not yet come. That's why it says in the prior paragraph, and yet will come. Because it hasn't come yet. Okay.
Yeah, that gets into the 10 horns.
Yeah, the beast who... We left off here?
Yep.
The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7th and is going into destruction. So he comes from the 7th. He's the 8th king and he's going into destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who the 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 will receive authority as kings.
For 1 hour.
Oh, sorry, but for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power to the authority of the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings. and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. The angel said to me, the waters you saw where the prostitute sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire, for God has put it in their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over the beast their royal authority. Until God's words are fulfilled, the woman you saw is a great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So the woman represents these kings or these people in places of power who are profiting off of essentially evil in some form or another. And then the actual Antichrist destroys that city or whatever it is, that whole system they have going on, and takes over everything. That's what I get from that.
Yeah, I think I get the same thing. This city, she represents this civilization of depravity, of debauchery.
You know, I saw something recently and it was quite helpful in understanding this. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was the something about the World Economic Forum and the Schwab guy. I can't remember his name, but the dude who like runs that,
Yeah.
giving a speech in front of a lot of people, telling them that they're going to have to give everything over to
Yeah, you will own nothing.
the new.
And yet you will be happy.
Right.
That guy.
Right.
Klaus Schwab.
Yeah. But it's almost like bringing it back to, okay, this is what the Bible says, but then bringing it back to our perspective of like potential New World Order, Illuminati kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
When he was giving that speech, he was giving it to powerful and rich people,
Yeah.
telling them that you're going to have to give everything over. Like, and they all knew who him was. Yeah. So it's almost like it's all like from, that perspective, it's almost like they're just like preparing it. Like they have their own religion and their religion is the Antichrist. I don't know how, but
I think he recently stepped down from the World Economic Forum.
Did he?
Because he's a little too bizarre, right? And they have a publicity problem because they've been a little bit exposed and they're having to eat some of their bizarre words.
Yeah. It's also interesting that it says that God put it into the beast's heart to destroy that woman, which represents like a city.
It's another tricky one.
Could it be San Francisco?
Funny. I know this is going to offend some people, but my time spent in large metropolis cities, they're not my thing.
Yeah. I kind of look at cities as like shitholes,
Yeah.
like a place you don't want to be involved with. Stay out of there.
The folks that live in these major cities where, and there's drugs everywhere and there's prostitution everywhere, but it really, it's in all the major cities on a much more profound level.
Yeah, there's places in probably every major city you can go to and see prostitutes standing
And
out
then
on
it
the
spreads
street.
out from there.
Yeah. In smaller cities, you don't really see that as much.
No.
I'm sure in some, but
And those people that live in the cities, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, they generationally are raised in these cities and they've never really experienced anything else.
yeah.
And that's a big thing that they don't understand, those of us who live closer to nature and how we connect with nature and we, do those.
How we actually live a more harmonious life with nature.
Yes.
Than
They're
anybody
missing
in the city
that.
does.
And they think they're in the greatest place on the planet and they would never want to change it, but they're missing the experience of what it is to be closer to nature and that simpler life, that more wholesome life.
Yeah, I remember somebody telling me a story about how if you live in the city all of your life, you don't realize that the rest of the world is like mostly unpopulated wilderness,
Yeah.
right? So you're super concerned with the environment because all you see is concrete and cars and this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not realizing that the rest of the world
Yeah.
is actually pretty nice.
Very
nature.
abundant, surprisingly abundant.
Yeah.
And you can't just go somewhere for a week and get it. You know, you have
Right.
to like really spend some time before you kind of see that whole picture of abundance
Yeah.
that is actually out there.
Yeah, because this whole claim of like overpopulation of the earth,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it's not Texas, but I'm pretty sure if you take like Brazil or any other country that's similar to the size of Brazil, there's enough land in just Brazil for every human to be there and have their own square mile
Yep.
in just one country.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of this narrative. That's a narrative, you know, the green initiative, which I would love to see us go to net zero. That would be great. Who's going to argue about going to net zero?
Yeah.
But we don't need to destroy economies and overtax and
Right.
and create industries that somebody makes a shit ton of money in a couple of years, and then whatever they came up with and whatever funds they were able to extract from this government program
Right.
were wasted.
Right. I think a lot of that, like, if you look at like wind power and solar power, I don't think those are the answers. I think the answer is nuclear,
Yeah, I would
you know?
agree.
And yeah, it produces waste, but that waste can be controlled.
Yep.
It's not just poured out everywhere in the land and everywhere in the air, in the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it can be stored.
Or
properly.
invest in stable fusion, which is even safer.
Sure.
But I agree. All these mechanical windmills and we still need to go that direction because there could be stuff there, you know. But
Yeah, it could be worked out.
It
over
could
time.
be like refined a little bit, but we tend to be emotionally reactive and just leap into these projects, which is not working out so well.
No. Yeah, because I saw one thing that like even if everybody had an electric car, our grid would just not be able to handle
Yeah.
to produce that much electricity. Nor is there enough, I believe, raw resources to create the batteries that would be needed for everybody to switch over to an electric
Yeah.
car. But
And maybe society should change a little bit where we're not, everybody's not hopping in these automobiles and having an hour and a half commutes. And like maybe that needs to be rethought. And that's one thing that came out of COVID is a lot of the workforce realized that they could work from home.
yeah, true. Also, high-speed rails would be awesome.
Yeah.
If we could put out a network of high-speed rails, we could reduce air travel by a ton. The rails run on electricity.
Yeah. I feel like America's kind of a shame right now. You know, like the Chinese got this new bullet 600-mile-hour maglev train that they just released, and here we are in America, and we don't have anything close to that.
Yeah,
It's embarrassing.
it sucks. If we had trains like that, whew, that'd be awesome. Not to mention, like, traveling on a plane is, a train is 10 times better than traveling on a plane. You know what I mean? The seats are bigger. You can get up and walk around. There's a dining cart. You can go get a meal. You know, like you're not stuck to your seat.
And I think that on that subject, God smiles upon nature is an important thing to God, right? It's all in his design. We live amongst these animals. We're put in domain over the animals. They're his creation. And all this other stuff is against nature. And we have to get back to
Kind of working with it or something.
working with nature. You know, there's not going to be highways and byways in the seventh seal when God, the seventh 1,000 years of peace. I think it's going to look differently.
I would imagine.
And I see it as more tribal, you know, family, you know, like I talked about earlier. Love, helping each other out. Smaller communities, maybe, I don't know. But
Who's to say, man? I mean, who knows? I think it's going to be so different that even the concepts of tribes and stuff won't even be there. I think, I don't know. I expect a lot. Like, it says there's not going to be any sorrow or grief and all of this. You know what I mean? So, like, it's hard to conceptualize that
Yeah, there was.
as where we are now because we're filled with sorrow and grief. You know, we don't even know what it could be like to not have that exist. So
Yeah,
it's
we
tough
can't
to
even imagine
conceptualize.
that, really.
No.
There was a couple words that I read about the 1,000 years and of peace and liberty, and then that the land would be everybody. So people don't like, we're the only species that literally has to pay. It's like when we're born, we're almost enslaved, born into this enslaved system, and that will be gone. And I like that, you know. Well, we'll be more like the animals.
But animals will war over land. Wolves
true.
will go after each other.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Nature, by nature itself, is ferocious and violent.
Yes. Maybe the most treacherous thing.
Yeah. It's really hard to wrap your mind around what that'll be like. Like, maybe we're not even built to comprehend
We
it.
can't. I don't think we can. We're not there. You know. We can't even conceptualize it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'll be awesome though.
Systems. We're free of these people that are trying to act as gods, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we're living in right now. They're just endless laws, taxes, bureaucracies, systems that are telling you you can't do certain things that should be just. They
I see
should
what you're
be.
saying.
You should be allowed to do them.
Yeah. All of these authorities that want to create boxes that you have to live within and whatnot. The nice thing is I don't think they're just not going to be needed
Right.
anymore.
They won't be needed.
Right. But for now, some of that stuff is needed. You know, as far as like,
Agreed to a certain
crimes.
point.
Yeah.
I think so.
Can't have people just running around, you know, breaking into people's houses, taking their stuff because they want it, kind of thing.
But on the same token, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the solution is on that, but God figures it out in the end.
Yeah, I don't think as we're imperfect beings, man, we're not going to have the right solution.
No,
You know what I mean? It's
it's obvious
yeah.
because we, Adam and Eve, and we bit the tree of knowledge.
Thanks,
Instead-
Eve.
Instead of just loving one another and enjoying the life that God created for us.
Right.
We got into a bunch of wars because we let Satan, Earth is the realms of Satan, and we were kind of doomed. We were born to sin.
Yeah. It'll be nice when he's gone.
Fix that problem,
Yeah.
but we have to go through one hell of a 6,000 years or whatever you want to call it before that problem is fixed.
Final point. Just don't take the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
Have your head cut off.
I'm watching out,
Yeah.
and I am ready to, get my head lopped off. I'm that spiritually right, finally.
Yeah.
I remember people talking about, that concept of revelations. I think it was my parents I was talking about one time, and I was just like, oh my God, my head cut off, like. And it frightened me so much at that time. It was like, but here, let's just say it's 30 years later or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah.
And it's funny how you grow spiritually and you understand all these complex. That's why, wisdom takes a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I look at this as like, meaning this life on this earth is like step one, which kind of sucks. But in order to get to a place that's much better, sometimes you got to go through something that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
The earth is a stage.
Yeah.
I believe I heard that the Hebrew
It's almost like a proving ground.
word, the translation of heaven in the Hebrew word for heaven is more stage. Or I think I'm saying that right. Essentially, the earthly realms are a stage, which means you're going somewhere else,
Right.
and you're going to get assessed.
Oh, a stage as in like not a stage that you're on, but a stage that you're
Right,
in.
kind of a stage.
Got you.
A level.
Okay.
Yep.
Got you.
And then that you will be, you're going to visit your maker, and you're going to have some sort of experience that kind of wraps up what you did wrong, what you did right, And then what happens after that, who knows? But
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we
that
did-
one was Revelations was strange, but
Yeah.
we did the best we could to tackle it.
As always, go out and do your own research.
I'm a lot more knowledgeable about the whole subject now, which I like, because Revelations, for me, as early as just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, recently, I was in the dark on a lot of this, but now I'm much more informed.
Yeah, me too. I actually feel better.
So I'm glad we picked this topic.
Yeah, this was a good one for sure. I enjoyed it. Helped me out a lot. Hopefully it can help some other people as well. Alrighty guys, thank you for watching. Make sure you hit the like, drop a comment on any thoughts you might have had anywhere along this video, and hit the subscribe button if you'd like. We'll catch you in the next one.